Thank you ever so much for joining us for what should be a brilliant conversation around this new digital community. And we're going to talk to the panel about whether this poses a challenge or an opportunity to what we would probably term as the traditional sector, or the sort of pre-pandemic sector as it was. And my name's Steve Mann. I'm going to be the sort of the chair. I'm a sort of director at 4Global consultancy working around the world in sport, fitness, physical activity strategy, but with a specific link to technology and to digital. And we've got a panel of Hugh Edwards from UK Active, Dave Wright from MyZone, and Miles Rymel from Precore, all of whom have played a massive role in shaping this sector's kind of response to the pandemic, and are undoubtedly going to have a massive influence on the future of it. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to sort of monitor the chat box and hopefully be able to unmute people as we need to ask questions of the panel. I've got a few lined up to get the conversation started. But you know, traditional housekeeping stuff in these situations, if you could sort of keep muted as we're opening and setting the scene, and the panelists are providing their initial responses, that would be great. And then we'll try and get through this the best we can. But what I thought would be useful is for me just to sort of frame the conversation a little bit before I ask the panelists to introduce themselves properly, and set a little bit of context to get you thinking about questions, and to sort of get us lined up and on the same page as we move forward. And my thinking around this challenge and opportunity that digital poses, you know, as the pandemic started to bite and lockdown became inevitable, participation levels and membership numbers dropped across the industry. Operators and suppliers had to respond in some way. Sometimes they did it together, sometimes independently of each other, but they responded by providing digital solutions to keep customers engaged, and with the aim of keeping those active habits that people had in place. They wanted to keep brand awareness and brand affinity high, and ultimately to improve the chance of a successful re-engagement with that individual, with that consumer post-pandemic, alongside, of course, the obvious health and protection benefits that we as a sector always want to provide. But, and it's quite a big but, I think, what this has done is introduced arguably a new, more convenient, more flexible way of exercising for people who would potentially have never considered that before. And this is at a time when arguably operators will, in theory at least, be desperate to entice people back into clubs and to demonstrate the value of in-club service and the associated membership fees that come with that, which will probably be higher than a digital-only solution would be. And it's not going to be possible not be possible or sensible just to turn these digital solutions off. So herein lies the challenge and the opportunity. How can we use this opportunity to deepen our relationships with the sort of core and traditional market, and broaden facilities reach into groups that may not have considered joining before, but for whom digital could be a trigger, whilst, however, ensuring that those people who have made these new habits during the pandemic will still see value in their site-based subscriptions and will want to come back when we reopen, partially at least on the 12th of April and moving forward. So that's the sort of challenge really that we've posed to the panel, and we want to discuss. And you know, I think it's going to be a fascinating insight. And if I could just turn to each of the panelists individually to provide a short introduction just about who you are and your role, but also what you and your respective organisations have been doing during the pandemic, with a sort of nod to this sort of digital engagement. That would be great. And Miles, would you mind kicking us off, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Miles Rymel, I'm marketing director for Precore, been with the company for over 15 years. And you know, the question to me is, you know, challenge or opportunity. And the certain truths are, we can't predict the future, but we can plan for the future. And this pandemic has accelerated the digital landscape considerably by a decade, and we cannot go back. And so we must embrace the opportunity of change. And you know, operators must be clear on their single-minded proposition, a proposition which has the consumer at the heart of that messaging. So, you know, if I was sort of posing sort of 5 questions and answers to challenge or opportunity, I'd be asking, what do exercisers currently do? And this is the biggest challenge. The competition for us as operators, or you as operators, is the competition is any other leisure time in any location and any format. That's a challenge. But then the opportunities come from asking the question, what do exercisers currently think? Who is your customer? And the good news is that there's awareness for the need of this broad wellness has increased dramatically. And so we can build on that. And that's a great opportunity. My third question would be, what do you, the club operator, local authority, want them to do? And again, it's a fairly obvious one. The opportunity is be an active club member, both inside and outside. It's everywhere. Consumers are omni-channel now, and so what do you want them to do? You want them to live an active lifestyle, but connect with you and your operation. And then my fourth question is, what is the single-minded proposition? Why should those people believe you and participate through you? And that's when we've got to be really relevant for that specific audience at a specific time. Huge opportunity there. And then finally, the question I would ask is, how can partners, and it is a partnership, and in this instance, how can partners like Precor, like MyZone, like UK Active, how can partners help you with the digital solutions? And at Precor, we believe that our digital solutions can improve the connections inside and outside the club, add value to the members inside and outside the club, and provide access to data to make even more informed choices. And so overall, I see this as an opportunity, but we must seize the day and make changes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Miles. And Dave, if you mind doing a similar thing, please.
I think the actual panel's finished now, isn't it? After that, thanks, thanks, Miles. So I'm Dave Wright. I'm the founder and CEO of MyZone, also the CEO and owner of Creative Fitness Marketing and Feel Good Fitness and Voyage Fitness. I've had a bit of a weird experience in the whole lockdown, as I'm sure most people do. So if you look at the pendulum, one side we've got a digital offering, which is MyZone, which has been all about connecting with people outside the club and inside and all that, and that's been terrific. In the middle, I've got a marketing company that gets members for gyms. We've been furloughed for the best part of 12 months. And then on the other end of the pendulum, I had to close my gym, one of my gyms, because I had a landlord that demanded rent all the way through lockdown. So sadly had to make staff redundant on one of my 9 gyms. And that was a tough time, so to speak. So I've had 3 different varying experiences of this whole lockdown. When we look at it, I think the only thing I would sort of like add to it, what Miles has said, is when we look at this whole platform and what's going on in regards to the digital and the likes, we look and say, okay, can people train at home? Because they can do it so frictionlessly through the virtual content, which is on one side. So those sleeping dogs out there are going to be sitting here going, why should I not go to the gym and continue to pay my membership when I can stay at home and not pay my membership on one side? But then on the other side, I think we've raised all tides. I think the awareness to exercise and what digital's done from that side is that it's brought a whole new era of people that want to exercise and that have introduced into it. So therefore, it's a great opportunity for them to actually take in that stepping stone into health clubs. And we can go on all about it. You know, gyms are going to be, you know, they're going to thrive. My gyms in Australia that bounced back after the actual pandemic have just bounced back to, you know, pre-2019 numbers, which has been really encouraging to see. And I think that will be the same. As you know, we could have a TV at home, but it doesn't mean people are not going to go to the cinema. You can make a 25p coffee at home. why would you go and spend £2.70 at a bloody Starbucks? So I think we're still going to be looking at experiences. We're going to look at the opportunities and fundamentally the expertise that our industry provide at the actual centres and the like. So that's my little opening gambit.
Thanks, Dave. And finally, Hugh, if I could come to you again, just a bit of intro to yourself, but also, if you wouldn't mind, from a UK Active perspective, just setting the scene for us a little bit, as someone who has got that kind of helicopter view of the industry, you know, what's the impact been like on operators? How is the landscape going to have changed when we reopen?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Hugh Evans, Chief Exec, UK Active. Well, just and looking at that question, you know, and really reinforcing what Miles and Dave have said, you know, as well as before you get to challenge or opportunity, it has to be acknowledge and embrace. And that's going to be a really key factor. Obviously, the last year for everybody, I talked about in the plenary session, has been hugely challenging, incredibly demanding. We have lost members and partners along the way. You know, we're estimating, you know, around 400 facilities had closed by March 2021, and we're constantly monitoring that. And so, you know, the survival and recovery of the sector, even though we are going into, fingers crossed, a period of reopening, even with restricted access, is going to be cautiously optimistic. You know, the 29th and the 12th, 29th of March, 12th of April, 17th of May. And actually something which, you know, looking at what David said as well, you know, we have to look at, you know, the numbers which are positive in terms of customer optimism to return. We look at the last year in terms of the drop in physical activity numbers, you know, as projected by Sport England, which has been steep and significant. And so whilst there has been a strong narrative from all partners around the importance of exercise during this lockdown, that hasn't been recognized in actual physical, you know, numbers from both children, young people, and also adults as well. And so there will be hopefully a sort of a boost in terms of numbers as and when we return. However, you know, there is going to be change, and that level of hybridity between the physical, the community, the space, the experience, but also the home is going to be very important. And just to add to that, yeah, the home has to be a nuanced situation. You know, it may well be good for people to have space who have a level of affluence, but when you're looking at some of those trenched inequalities, especially around people from lower income backgrounds who don't have the space and don't have the opportunity, then that restrictions become tighter. So from our perspective, it's got to be working with and collaborating with Miles and with Dave and the wider supplier base to listen and understand and get their expertise, how you can make that customer experience in the facility, in the place, as good as it possibly can be going forward, with a level of agility and adaptability to meet the customer demands, especially when there are going to be changes to people's lifestyles coming out of this crisis.
Yeah, fascinating. And I think, you know, I've got on my list to come back to that inequalities question a little bit later on as we go through this. But before we do that, actually, I'll come to Dave, if that's all right, Dave. So, because, you know, I've been following what MyZone have been doing through the pandemic pretty closely, and I'd argue, you know, you've been at the forefront of this this quest to maintain that link between operator and consumer with the clubs closed. What in your opinion has worked well as we've gone through this sort of pandemic? But I suppose the bigger question, how are the operators that you're working with tackling this issue of a hybrid model that Hugh's described? Because it's a really easy thing just to throw out and say that we're going to do a hybrid model. But what does that look like in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think it's been easy for that many people. I know Harvey, from the CEO of Equinox, one of the most exclusive brands in the world, has gone on record to say that him trying to launch their own digital solution has been their worst financial decision they've ever made in the last 15 years. They lose $185,000 per month, and they're trying to get that down to only losing $135,000 a month in regards to the cost, trying to go down that route. I mean, look, I don't know, the word pivot's been a well abused term throughout this whole lockdown. We were already on the road of saying to operators, stay connected with your members, whether they're inside the club or outside. Obviously with MyZone, when they work outside and the likes. Our data through this whole 12 months is that people's workouts have not changed. It dropped about 60% in April of 2020 when people went, what is going on here, but then it jumped back. But the amount, because we're able to track whether people are working inside the club or outside, we've actually found that the people's workouts have continued. We've got the data to support that. So I think in regards to what operators have done, you know, we all scrambled, didn't we? You know, we all were like, quick, let's get Facebook up, let's get Instagram up, let's, you know, and I think the operators that did really well were the ones that did something. And I think collectively, members sort of like have realized that we're all in this together. You know, my manager of one of my gyms in Australia, he would literally, when he'd go down to the shopping center, he would have random people, non-members saying, you know, because we'd be doing Facebook lives, Instagram, you know, obviously my zone sessions and all this, literally saying, we know what you're trying to do to get people, you know, active through this time. And so I think the operators that did do something made a huge difference. And because you sort of like stood connected with those members. I don't think it was all about how the production level of what you delivered. If it's real, and I think where it worked really well is, that's Billy from my gym. I know Billy from my gym. He has a laugh. He puts the t-shirt on backwards or whatever, and he stays connected. And I think the operators that sort of like did do that and made it real. Yes, we've got professional content, and yes, you can have, you know, beautiful sceneries and production levels and all this. But in my mind, mixing that in with live local content delivered to your membership base was the winner. And in my opinion as well, and this is just my opinion, I think we certainly didn't charge for it, because I didn't, you know, I don't know whether it bounced back on those, you know, the operators that sort of like were trying to effectively profit from it. We certainly looked at it as more of a revenue protection, not revenue generation. And I think that there had such a much more positive response by going down that line of thought.
And do you think, just as a quick follow-up, do you think people will keep that option going moving forward? That's what you're kind of recommending to people, is that, you know, that local content continues to be part of the solution?
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely. We launched today MZ Remote Plus, which is a 168 class timetable on the hour, every single hour, intertwined with it with live content. And we've sort of like, we did it so that operators can switch out with their own content. So yes, you know, I had Kelsey doing yoga classes, but it's not going to be compared to Tara Styles on Santa Monica Beach with beautiful lighting and all that for that type of session. However, with local content mixed with professional content, it will definitely continue, because I think, you know, we see it as a retention thing. We don't know. I mean, you know, I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone here, but I think as employers, we don't really know what the working environment's going to be. Are we going to go 5 days a week, 9 to 5 or whatever? Are we going to do a hybrid approach in regards to people working from home? I mean, these are all the challenges that global companies around the world are sort of like faced with right now. And so therefore, that solution of going, you know, hey, I'm in London 3 days a week. I used to go 5 days a week, but I'm only doing 3 days a week. Those 3 days I'd go to the gym. Those other 2 days, how can I still be connected with the gym, but not actually go down to the gym? And that's where I think that hybridization will absolutely sort of like support the current climate.
Amazing. And Miles,
can I add something, Steve?
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with Dave. I just want to add that, you know, I think with digital, we can, in the club environment, with the professionals we have, add even more value. So absolutely, the classes that are being sent out, the content is absolutely essential, but it's the clubs can provide the guidance, real guidance to members, and they can help read the numbers. And I really feel this is important. It's not just, well done, you've done your exercise, but what more, and this is what digital can help with, what other exercise should you be doing? And as Dave said, it's rather like going to the pub. Well, Dave didn't actually say that, but I mean, when you go to the pub on Monday, you might go for a quiet drink with your work colleagues. On Wednesday, you might go for a family dinner with people from your family, and then on Saturday, you might have a big night out. Our exercise needs are different during the course of the week, and digital, looking at the data and providing that insight back to the individual, personalized solutions can really help motivate and engage. And I think this is what the centres, the leisure centres can provide.
Yeah, no need for one size fits all as a simple product anymore. People expect something a little bit different, don't they? And I think, you know, building on that, and actually please do fire some questions into the boxes, guys, if there's anything you're thinking of here, either to me privately or to everybody. But I'll come back to Hugh quickly, because of course Dave mentioned around the participation levels a moment ago that, you know, not seeing a huge drop off. You've been talking to government obviously regularly through this process. You know, they're worried, of course, about, and we've seen some alarming data from children and young people especially. You know, how are the government looking to us to respond to the pandemic? And then I'll come to sort of Dave and Miles with the back of that for some solutions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, Steve, and you know, there's probably a number of multiple areas of conversation we're having across different cohorts. The children, young people area is really interesting, you know, because obviously there was, you know, steep decline across all age groups. The teenage years area was very interesting, because what's come out in the analysis, you know, from Sporting as Active Lives, was the decline in activity amongst boys was a lot steeper than it was amongst girls. And some of the wider interrogation has been around the utilization of online fitness as part of the day-to-day rhythm of what was going on in households during lockdown, which is something which is interesting for the sector to think about, especially going in from teenage into young adult ages, around what the offer and proposition there is. Going back to what Dave said, huge issue. You know, what is going to be the reconciliation around the workplace and the hybridity of home and office, and how does the sector, especially in urban areas, adapt and relate to that? You know, because, you know, I can't see, you know, a tap being switched on, like, you know, on the 21st of June, if that is Independence Day, and everything going back to normal. It's going to take time, and so there's going to have to be an adaptability in that. And then obviously working with, you know, the conversation we're having with around the NHS and with and around social prescribing is a big area, and you know, some research which we are in the process of finalising, especially around 55 plus age group, and doing a huge amount of consultation and focus groups, is a desire to have both, you know, a greater relationship with gyms, leisure centres as well, but also a combination which marries the community, the physical community and space, but also with an online digital relationship as well with those individuals. And I think there is a number of areas which we need to explore there. Furthermore, and this is the sort of conversation I would love to be getting Miles and Dave into around the table with government, is, you know, the government looking at, you know, the incentivization agenda. You know, a couple of weeks ago it announced that it was appointed Sir Keith Mills to look at exercise and incentivization. We're going in at source with Keith in terms of having that conversation, but we need to get the sector's expertise around the table to really explain what behavior change looks like and how we incentivize people, especially through both you know, physical opportunities and also the digital opportunities as well. That is a real opportunity for us going forward.
Yeah, and just to build on that question, really, because, you know, I like Dave points a moment ago that there were an awful lot of sleeping members before who weren't active and weren't using, who are now just no longer members. Now that may not impact upon the participation levels too much, but of course it does have a ginormous commercial impact upon operators and upon the sector. So really what we're thinking then is, building on Hugh's point, digital might be a tool to engage within the healthcare environment. You know, people who aren't comfortable coming to a club, but that can actually do something at home. But do you see a digital solution as being an opportunity to kind of engage those people who weren't using before, but obviously had an interest because they did join, and provide that stepping stone from nothing digital to the club? Miles, Dave, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Dave, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, and to that point in regards to the industry, I think we've had the probably one of the biggest industry wake-up calls in the last 12 months. Many years, I've always said that, you know, if you didn't get a new member into your gym for 6 months, a brand new member for 6 months, how would you treat the existing people you've got? Would you at least say hello and goodbye to them? Would you check up on them to see whether they're achieving their goals? Would you connect with them if they didn't turn up for a couple of weeks? So I think we've had a wake-up call, and I think the gyms that have had that deeper connection, not just, hey, there it is, build it, let it come, you know, you're a number, not a name. I think, you know, that as a sector, you know, you could look at it and go, hey, I think it's been great because we've been a little bit more considerate towards, you know, our customers. I think the other thing that we have to look at as a whole is if we get people physically active and they're, you know, more active more often, more people more active more often, whether they come into our facilities or not, have we succeeded? And I would argue that we have. I would argue that of course the benefits of going into gyms, of commercial equipment, not many people can afford a 1,700 pound watt bike in their front room, but they can go into a commercial gym and there might be 7 of them, and there might be a 7,000 pound Precor treadmill, although Miles is probably doing a deal right now in the next 20 minutes. But anyway, but the point of the matter is that I think, you know, weirdly through this lockdown, we've picked up quite a few NHS hospitals because they want a safe and structured way to monitor their customers, right? And so they're using MyZone to do that. For me and for us, I think it's a great pathway for us to connect the NHS with the fitness professionals so that we've got that pathway to say, okay, here is prehabilitation care, but then let's do that transition into the actual health clubs. And I think that's where the opportunity lies. If we, you know, as a sector, we have a fantastic amount of stigmatization in regards to people thinking it's fit bodies and you know, it's all about that because our marketing was geared that way, you know. And I think during these times where people have been able to do those digital solutions from home, and you know, whether they're a member and their wife's gone, here, let's join in as well and go, oh, do you know what? I think I could do that class. And they've had 12 months to get ready for it. I think it is a fantastic pathway for them to be able to feel a little bit more confident to take that step into the gym. So I think it's a great sort of like a cradle to grave, and we can only benefit when you've got the likes of Chris Whitty saying that under no circumstance is exercise not good for you. So we as a sector need to fucking grab it by its goulashes and literally go out there and sort of like maximize that positive benefits of health, well-being, and how we do it, whether we meet the members where they want to go or whether we offer the flexibility in the solution within our clubs.
Amazing. And Miles, is that the sort of conversation that you're having with the clubs you support with your clients at the moment? Is that what they're actively trying to do and looking to explore?
Yeah, I mean, in addition, I mean, say an Iron Leisure in South Wales have just taken on a digital solution from Precor, but one of the things they were looking for was the ability to integrate our systems, which was going to bring in connectivity and added value for members and the data, with their existing systems, so that they can promote the entire leisure authority services, because they're already doing that. And so they're just that wider holistic approach. And I thought that was a really positive way of looking at it.
Yeah, that sounds like a great example. And Hugh, sorry, I saw you raise your hand.
No, it's good. I was just reinforcing what Dave was saying really as well. The flipping of the conversation around exercise has been very important in this last 12 months, led by Whitty, and we have a key role to play with that, you know. And that comes back to how we work in terms of the narrative around the role of physical activity having such a positive impact on your physical, mental, and social well-being. One of the cul-de-sacs that government is about to go down again, regrettably, is around, you know, the binary conversation around how do you address a symptom like obesity, instead of addressing the wider health inequalities we face as a nation, and where physical activity can have a major impact on a number of these, including, you know, obesity, but not exclusively. And so that's a key part of the narrative around how you're supporting people on that journey around physical activity. You know, Professor Greg Wright, who's on our board, talks about, you know, it's not couch to 5K, it's couch to the door. Let's start with that, then get to the high street, then get to the park, then get to the facilities.
So what we'll do, let's build out that health inequalities point and the pricing point, because it's a question that's coming as well around how people are going to pay moving forward. But Hugh, just to expand that point a little bit, because obviously the deepest impact has been felt in the most deprived communities. We've seen inequalities kind of broaden, and the question is, you know, what role does the sector have in engaging these groups? But I want to set it in a slightly controversial context whereby, especially in the public sector, operators now are going to have to work in the most commercial way they possibly can. All those nice to have things that they possibly did before, arguably are going to go out the window because it's survival time. The deal that's been struck between most operators and their local authorities means that, you know, a lot of those contractual pressures are now going to be relaxed because it's all coming down to sort of money. So, you know, how are operators going to move forward? What should they be doing? What's the role that's kind of expected?
And also, you know, to add to that, Steve, as well, is, you know, the growing evidence base from private operators around social value. You know, you look at, you know, the Gym Group's report in the last week, looking at, you know, 1.8 billion social value from across their estate since 2016, I believe. But yeah, look, I think it is going to be a reconciliation. But, you know, the first thing we have to do, especially with the public leisure estate, is get it to survive, right? And there is remains a huge funding gap, you know, which government has to support and aid. And then that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. That came up in the opening plenary as well. This is a huge area which is unavoidable in terms of the long-term sustainability. But running parallel with that is, of course, the need for that level of reform, and that level of reform across the whole estate. I think there's going to be a lot of formal work taking place, you know, over the coming months to look at the reform of the estate itself, to make sure it is best suiting and best operating with those communities. Digital is part of that, but also is a greater flexibility and agility around price points, is around the integration within community groups as well. So in the moment, you know, it is very difficult to say to operators, you need to try and find a reconciliation in the immediate, when it's literally about keeping your head above water. But that conversation will understandably come once there is a greater stability in terms of the financial reconciliation that's required, you know, with a level of urgency with government.
Yeah, and I imagine the pricing strategy around this and how people pay moving forward is the conversation in many boardrooms up and down the country at the moment in fitness operators. You know, Dave, when you're talking to people about the hybrid models and how are you talking to people about the pricing strategy moving forward with this? How do you think it's going to work?
Look, everyone has a different plan of attack, and I mean, obviously, Miles Peloton bought Precor, so I'm sure he has probably a different approach to me as an operator, so to speak. But the one thing that I've already seen, well, I sort of like we focus on is value add, adding value to our existing membership. So rather than driving the price down, which is what we've done for the last 10 to 15 years, we've just constantly been driving who can go the cheapest. So I think it's about adding the value to the membership. So I see it more of as a retention, you know, solution. I think it's more of bake it into a membership, but then also having it as an offering. So if you do have the offering, you know, I mean, you know, as I said, without going into too much detail, but we've got our own offering for operators. But what we're sort of like saying is, look, you know, if you've got existing membership, include it with your membership, but then also offer a Voyage Fitness at Home membership. So that Voyage Fitness at Home membership, you know, they could pay $10 a month or $15 a month or $20 or £10 a month, but they don't get access to the gym. So it's sort of like having that stepping stone, because let's face it, Apple Fitness Plus are trying to take our members to their platform. Peloton's trying to take their members to their platform. Beachbody are trying to take their members to their platform. So you as an operator need to try and keep them within you and your community. And that's my opinion, because if if there is an appetite for people to pay for it, why not have a North Lanarkshire Leisure at home membership, but then it's included if you do join within the club. So therefore there's no excuses why someone can say that they don't have enough time to exercise. So it's that, that's the way that I personally would see it.
And Miles, if I come to you on that point, I know we can't go into sort of specifics around the Peloton deal and so on and so forth, but is that the direction you see the industry traveling in? Is that the direction you see Precor moving into?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for those who don't know, I assume most do know, Precor has been purchased by Peloton. The deal will go through in the next few months. And so I'm not allowed to talk about what might happen in the future with Peloton. I simply don't know, and so I can't. Personally, I'm really excited by it, and clearly content is so important to engaging all levels of activity, and Peloton are particularly good at providing content and using their digital platform. Coming back to pricing, digital does allow you to do this tiered pricing really quickly and really easily, and starting with the freemium model, it's free to all for some basic levels, and then adding, as you add value, you charge more. And what the joy again of this tiered approach is that you can see what is most popular, what people are willing to pay for, and therefore provide more of that and build on that. And in addition, again with digital, you can keep on testing, test and quickly test different pricing models, and looking at the results and making those adjustments.
Fantastic. And just flicking through the questions here, I mean, most of which relate to James Taylor's lounge, which is quite impressive for those of you who can't see it. But referencing back to Ian Donnelly's point that the traditional gym has only reached 16% of the market, and it's a good point. And this digital opportunity now, in exactly the way that Dave and Miles have just described, is arguably a fantastic opportunity to reach the 84% who haven't used us traditionally. And Darren Quinn has pointed out in here that is a huge cultural change that's happened within organizations. I think Dave referenced this earlier, that actually now we're going to have to focus much more on that in-club experience. We're going to have to focus much more on customer service and culture, and making sure we kind of jump on that opportunity wherever we can. Dave, do you want to just?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say about that. I think the one thing that we have to bear in mind in regards to the digital solution is that there is a greater appetite for it. In the same way, right now, there is a greater appetite for us to use Zoom in a conference like this. If we would have thought 12 months ago, or even 13 months ago, we're going to do an ActiveNet conference and it's going to be all on Zoom, people would bloody Google to sit there and go, what is Zoom? Was it relevant? But now kids are on top of it. They know how it works for schools or teams or whatever. So I think the appetite has changed, and that has been a great thing. So people have been able to realize, what the benefits are. There has been crazy stories, and we've probably already seen that. We had one of my gym instructors literally do a live Facebook stream, and her 3-year-old child decided to walk out the front garden in the back and take a pee on the grass, literally live on Facebook. And it was hilarious. We had another instructor who was doing a live stream class, and the neighbor, and it was a Friday night, 5:30 in Australia, the neighbor had a few too many beers and started putting the hose over her while she was over the fence, while she was trying to take a class, because it was a bit too noisy for him of a Friday night. So we've all had the funny stories, but I think there's also been, there's more of an appetite for it. And hey, look, bloody Oz Aerobics has been there for years. Jane Fonda, P90X Insanity was just immense. So we all realize that that's there. Now we've got that frictionless delivery of it, which just makes it a little bit easier for people to experience it. And again, to one of the points that's been raised is that, you know, if we get the world more physically active, whether they've come into our gyms or not, but it's because of the, you know, everyone has decided that physical activity is a better place. Have we succeeded? Yeah, of course we have, in my mind. You know, do we, you know, and that's the big thing that I think that we need to realize. You know, of course we have to focus on why our facilities offer that value proposition, expertise, commercial equipment, all that. But I think we've got to literally look at the whole broader thing to encourage people. So little steps all the way. Just the same as starting, you know, as a gym, someone that's interested in fitness to becoming a manager of a leisure centre, there's that journey and pathway. So with digital, I think that just helps lubricate that journey from contemplation to actually adherence to exercise.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think something that Penny has raised in the question here, and Miles, if I just sort of put this to you, because you referenced this kind of digital enables you to sort of measure and monitor and potentially scale something that's going well or pull something that's not going particularly well. Penny's asked, you know, what does the panel believe operators need to start, stop, and continue to measure so they can use the data that you referenced that's available from digital solutions to deliver against their objectives?
Oh, huge question on that one. I'm going to take one part of that. I mean, because there's so many things to measure, and it might be you start with your staff. You know, as simple as that. Are they reaching out to their to the members? For example, if you have a digital tool where you can communicate with members, are they actually doing that? Monitoring your staff levels to have they sent messages out? Have they sent classes out? Are they engaging? Because this is one of the core things, you know, that there is the digital bit and there's the human bit, and people want the human guidance and advice. And so that's so important. So that's one area. It might be a totally different area, your operational efficiency areas. When the clubs are open, looking at your equipment. Is it up and running? You know, receiving emails instantly if something is down. Have you got the right portfolio of equipment? Are things being underused so you can move things around? You know, we see at the moment in the States, for example, that strength is really popular. People who are going into the clubs, which they're allowed to in the States, strength seems to be much more popular than it was 6-12 months ago. And so clubs can see that and adjust their layouts, particularly when we're talking about social COVID layouts and space. You can adjust your staff leveling for that. So there's so many areas that you've got to decide what's important to you. Is it your staff? Is it your operational efficiency? Or is it your members, how often they're coming in or how often they've been active?
Yeah, it's a big question, because if we're going to really encourage people to get back into clubs, the club experience has got to be good, and everything's got to be what people want. Otherwise, the value will disappear, and as will the members. We have 5 minutes left of the session, and I thought we'd finish off. We're all mystic Megs at the moment. We all like to predict with our friends exactly what's going to happen and what's going through the mind of Boris Johnson and the government. And I thought I'd sort of finish off on a slightly lighter note and come to each of the panel members to give us their big, bold predictions for what's going to happen, well, in the world, if you like, but probably more pertinently in the fitness industry moving forwards through 2021. What do you reckon, Dave? Where are we heading? What's your prediction?
I reckon Hugh go first, and then that way we can say, yeah, what Hugh said.
Well, I think by this time next year, I think we will have really come through that survival recovery phase and be in a position with real strength that we can kick on and really be completely integrated with some of those services that Dave talked about with the NHS to provide that essential service to society. I think that is the direction of travel we're going to go. And digital will play a key role in that, alongside issues of inclusivity standards, the facility regeneration themselves as well. So, you know, hugely confident in the direction of travel, but it's going to be a bumpy road, you know, as we navigate our way out of this crisis.
Yeah, becoming an essential service, connecting all the, I think the common theme through the questions here, and one from Graham Hind here, is this is now an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity to bust out of the capacities that we had before and the stigmas that we had before that Dave referenced, and sort of reinvent our proposition to a broader group of people. And fingers crossed that's what happens. Dave, I will come back to you this time.
Yeah, what he said. No, hey, look, I think through this pandemic, the bricks and mortar that struggled, transactional ones, and I think the retail where you can go into PC World or whatever, or you can go onto Amazon and go bang, so transactional. So I think the gyms that may struggle are the ones that were very transactional. So they weren't about the experience, they weren't about the people, they weren't about that community. And so in my mind, in the same way is that, cinemas will continue, experiential places will continue, so will gyms that offer that sense of community. And I think off the back end of all this, and certainly I know with my 4 kids, when they went back to school, of course it started off by, oh great, we're at home. Then by the end of it, we're counting down to the 8th of March, because they were like, we want to be with our friends together. And that is going to be the same with gyms, in my opinion. I think that's going to be the same, where people are going to, want to go out there. And again, when we launched the MZ Remote Plus, it was all about community. So yes, you've got virtual, but the one thing that we did that was incredibly different is it's a set timetable on the hour, every hour, so that it might be a pre-recorded class, but when you're there, you might have 7 other people on the screen, you might have 77 other people on the screen, but you feel like you belong in the community. So I think the digital solutions where it's not you in solo by yourself staring at a laptop on a bike, where if it's something that it's a community and you can offer that community, I think that's where the rubber will hit the road, the appetite will be there for it. And I think, clubs need to embrace it. And Miles hit the nail on the head, is that technology and digital is all about operational efficiency, so that you can do the things that digital doesn't replace the human element. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's accelerate it. So if I've got more information about you, because I've collected it digitally, I can send Johnny Curley a message and say, hey, on the weekend, Johnny, you look like you had a fantastic walk up in the Scottish Highlands, because I'm connected with him through the digital platform that we are. So that therefore I've used the human element to actually engage better. So I think that's where I think it's an exciting time for the industry. It's an exciting time for community leisure. It's an exciting time for the sector as a whole of raising the tide on physical activity. So pretty pumped about that.
Amazing. And I can completely agree. For bringing together the data sources, understanding more about the individual, not just about the club, is going to be absolutely essential going forward. And Miles, if I come to you for the last word, please, in a couple of minutes, your prediction for the rest of the year.
I'm going to be positive about this one. I think it's going to be, we're going to have more, so a growth of personalized, local, community-based activity. It will be all people, any location, any format, any time. But I think there will be more activity.
Amazing. And ambition, I think we can all...
Mr. Man, no, Stevie boy, what's your prediction, fella?
My prediction, well, I think something very similar, actually. I think we are going to digitally connect with the health industry, and I think we're going to have people flooding from down those steps that we described earlier, from inactive to something at home, But the key for me, Dave, is education. I think the digital strand should be about educating people for what the in-club experience will end up being like. And I think if we can help people on that transition from sofa to gym, which has proved to be one hell of a jump historically, we'll be on a good road. And on that note, which shouldn't be me finishing it off, but it will be in this instance, I'd like to say thank you ever so much to Hugh, Miles and Dave. We couldn't have asked for a better panel for this conversation. I think, yeah, we posed the question at the start, challenge or opportunity. We've concluded very much this is an opportunity. Wish you all the best for the rest of the day, for the rest of the year. Operators aspire to a reopening and get engaged in that. All the best of luck. And can't wait to see you all soon. Thanks very so much.
Thanks, Steve.